Welcome to Techlandia, a podcast about and for the technology industry, a place to learn, connect, and engage with leaders and thinkers involved in the technology industry. You can check us out at techoregon.org, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Good morning and welcome to the latest episode of the Techlandia podcast. My name is Skip Newberry, President and CEO of TAO, and we're pleased to have with us John Higgins is our guest. John's a experienced executive with quite a bit of experience in content distribution, strategic partnerships, digital media strategy. He's had a nearly 20-year career that spans multiple major brands, including Walt Disney Company, Amazon, Hulu, and Roku. He's now founded a Tech Pitch Strategies LLC, which is a company that supports sports and technology startups and also established entities. And he's also serving as an advisory board member of Vidian Labs. John, welcome, and we're pleased to have you.
Thanks, Skip. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So I wanted to start off by asking you, we had a chance to connect a little while back, and, you've definitely had quite the professional trajectory, but you've also overcome some adversity during that time. And I'm wondering, how has that prepared you for navigating your professional career?
Yeah, I think it kind of started, resilience has kind of been like the key theme for me that I think originated, initially from my father's passing back when I was, a freshman in college. That kind of started it. And then, between that and then my own career transitions, I think that kind of really taught me the importance of adaptability and resilience. So, it's really kind of these experiences all together has really kind of shaped that to kind of navigate the uncertainties, at least of the tech industry and the media landscape, really kind of instilling a mindset that embraces, change and challenges is really, I look at it now as, it's opportunities for growth and innovation.
That's great. I mean, there's definitely a certain amount of volatility right now in the tech sector, but also across a number of sectors. A lot of change going on, both at kind of the macro and micro levels globally. And as you think about how folks are looking to kind of navigate all this change, what caused you to decide to leave, a relatively established, stable company like Roku and launch a startup, Tech Pitch Strategies?
Yeah, well, that was, that actually was a pretty pivotal moment in my life, both professionally and personally. Given that the rounds of the large tech layoffs that were happening, I was impacted as part of that, back in October of last year, and took some time really kind of processing and reflecting and reevaluating, like, all right, what is that next step? And, how can I pivot this experience that I've gathered and really kind of figure out what those next steps are. So, I spent the time really kind of evaluating my values, interests, and looked at the experience and narrowed that down to broadly. My interests are in sports and tech. And then from there, looked at it in a way of, okay, from a market standpoint, there are still many layoffs that are happening. I have the mindset of where I want to continue to keep, growing and scaling companies. That's something I'm very interested in doing and I find passionate. And then realize, okay, at that standpoint, let's go the consulting route, start up a business, which I've never done before. It's this, for me, that was a new skill set that I wanted to pick up and learn. And then from there, really kind of dive in, head first into, meeting with various, sports and tech startups, folks in the, industry in general, including yourself, Skip, of, look, I want to dig roots deep in, especially in Oregon where I live, but also make sure too that, by the goal is the end of this year, I want the mindset to be, or people thinking like, hey, there's a sports or tech challenge or something that they have an opportunity with. I want my name in that mix. And I think my experiences, will help a lot of companies with that.
That's great. We've got a lot of established companies that are becoming increasingly tech-like in their digital transformation journeys. And I want to kind of start there a little bit with a couple of questions, and then maybe we can get into some of your thoughts and perspectives on sort of the role of technology and sports and opportunities for startups. But starting first with kind of the digital transformation topic, from your experience working with a number of major brands, I'm wondering, how should traditional businesses approach digital transformation to stay relevant and ideally even become more competitive?
Yeah, this is a big one because I feel like too, just going back in my early days in the old like kind of cable days, there was the traditional model, and then there was all of a sudden a shift where that was what kind of sparked my interest in kind of pivoting into the tech side, going from ESPN to Hulu. I absolutely loved everything I did at ESPN. I was very passionate about the company, but at that point I was, trying to align both my personal life with my work life and create that kind of balance on both sides. And negotiations has always been something I've been very passionate about and interested in, like the negotiation strategy. And I realized, all right, I want to get more involved with tech. I need to figure out how to do that. I also want to learn all the different sides of the negotiation table. And so made that pivot from ESPN to Hulu to work on the tech side and learn from there. But what I've learned from that, going from Hulu to then Amazon and then Roku, is for a traditional company standpoint, I truly believe that the traditional companies should approach digital transformation as it's a shift that involves not only adopting new technologies, but also fundamentally changing that operational mindset. I think those two, are extremely important to do in parallel. It's really about integrating the digital thinking into all aspects of the business. So from customer interactions to back-end processes, just ensuring that they're agile and can quickly respond to like the market changes. And I think by doing that and being open-minded on that, it really will help with that shift.
I'm wondering, you've talked a bit about some of the operational processes and shifting from, more of a waterfall to an agile mindset and an agile approach. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the importance of also cultural change. And do you have any specific thoughts on that in terms of what you saw across some of your previous experience?
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like you have like a company culture, and then there's the individual like department type cultures, and ultimately it really kind of stems from that leadership role and who you're kind of working for and the brand that you're representing, and making sure that there's trust there, and seeing that the leadership is actually playing that pivotal role and leaning into that to a digital transformation. So setting that vision is important, being open and transparent as far as cultivating that culture and embracing the change. There's been so much change. Literally over the last like 5 years for everyone. Like it involves, like for me, it's, from what I've learned too, even with all the different, networking meetings I've had recently, like you got to lead by example, and people first culture is important, especially as you're leaning into, new tech opportunities. So encouraging that innovation, investing in team capabilities, kind of manage these new technologies, the effective leadership communication, it communicates the value of digital initiatives, and, you're helping align them with the company's strategic goals. So making sure that you can stick to that overall mission, I think is important.
That's great. You mentioned a bit about the role of leadership and kind of setting direction and culture and kind of leading by example. So I'm wondering, do you have some specific sort of examples of certain types of leaders, like an archetype, if you will, that you experienced during your time at some of these major brands, where you're like, oh yeah, this is something worth emulating?
Yeah. I know this sounds a little cliche, just, and obvious, but I'd say throughout my entire career, I think, and I don't know, maybe it's, honestly too, just getting my start there and feeling like not just like a number, but more so like part of a family was initially during my time at ESPN. I think that time frame in my career really kind of shaped my understanding, and also, realizing like my priorities of, you want to make sure that you're in roles that, or companies that, one, you're passionate about the brand, but then you also, look up to the leadership and are motivated by what you're doing because of what you're seeing from a leadership standpoint. So to answer your question, I look at like someone like Bob Iger, uh, all the way from the top, where to me, it was someone that was like, man, this guy, he's just buttoned up. He's very well spoken. He's an amazing leader. And he's done amazing things for the Walt Disney Company. But, to me, that was, I looked at him, and even on a personal side, like he is, he's a biker, he's an athlete. Like he kind of had it all. And during my time there, and that was someone to me that I really looked into, of like, man, I really respect this leadership, and it's something that I want to continue to carry as I go throughout my career. And that's not always going to be the case, but you remind yourself of that, of like, all right, as I grow through my career, these are the examples that I want to set based on, someone that I look up to and admire, and have continued to do throughout my career.
In your time with Roku and Amazon, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the ways in which you've seen technology play a role in some of the transformation that occurred, especially related to media distribution.
Yeah, so I would say there was for both, actually both of those covers, from Amazon and Roku standpoint, I mean, there was a pretty radical shift in the media distribution and consumption in general. And, working on that tech side, you look at when you turn on your TV or your living room device. I mean, at one point, years ago, there are so many different, apps and services, and, you assume that, this content is all going to be on this one app. And then you realize, oh, well, I have to go and find it and search for this particular show or watch this particular sport. And it was really getting, to a point where it was confusing, and aggregating that content and, bringing it into, one kind of central location by theme was, is important. But from what I saw, like that shift from traditional broadcasting to being able to watch on demand, or, with streaming service that are allowing users to kind of choose what, when, and how they watch their content, it's really, at that point, democratized the access to content and open up new avenues for what I believe for like niche markets, independent creators. We saw a shift, like sports was a major focus when I was at, Roku as well as Amazon. But from Roku's standpoint, it was, hey, there's so many different, rights that are being distributed across the board on multiple different content providers. How do you aggregate that content in a way where you're promoting their services, but also being able to kind of centralize it into a location that, everyone can access? And, created the sports zone. And that was something that, had a lot of buzz, but it was also, very big in a way where, for consumer access and consumption.
Talking a little bit about the emerging tech trends that you kind of saw kind of play out over time at Roku and Amazon. I'm wondering, are there certain ones that you think really have traction or legs, if you will, in further revolutionizing the sports and media industries going forward?
Yeah, it's funny. The Apple headset, I can't think of what the name is offhand, the goggles on just having the content in front of you. What was interesting is a buddy of mine had sent me a text, or kind of a video capture of him playing simulated golf while also watching the Masters at the same time, which I thought was pretty incredible. But I look at those emerging trends, and it's really interesting. I mean, I think augmented and virtual reality they're set to kind of redefine the viewer's experience. There's so many different immersive ways now to watch sports and media. And then, the obvious AI and machine learning, I believe those are definitely revolutionizing content personalization, localized and targeted, advertising, viewer analytics, which, that all in turn is going to allow media companies just to offer more of a highly kind of tailored content suggestion or experience, and interactive viewer experience as well.
It's interesting you mentioned kind of the mixed reality, AR, VR sort of approach to essentially bringing the entertainment and the experience of being there in person directly into someone's house. I'm wondering what do you see changing, if anything at all, with respect to the live in person sporting events? I mean, do you see a threat for them there in terms of where media is going?
Yes and no. I mean, personally, I mean, I know there are the diehard fans, that want the in-person experience. I mean, the social interaction, like, I mean, I'm one of them, where I enjoy that. But I also, though, in turn, like, having the ability to feel like I'm there, now, especially being a parent and with 3 kids, and having the ability to feel like I'm having an immersive experience within my own home. And I think that's where technology is headed, in a way where, you're at the game, whether you're there, physically, or you're there, virtually. But given like where we are today with technology and just the content distribution, and, you know, the clarity in what you're seeing, and, the lack, lag time, like, to me, it's really getting to a point where you're going to feel like you're there. And then I feel like there's going to be times where you're going to want to go there. There's going to be, I don't think there's ever going to be a situation where it's going to be a total challenge. That there's always ways to get folks there. At Amazon, we work just from an advertising perspective. These stadiums, to your point, or teams are getting more involved and leaning more involved with the digital strategy, where it's all right, well, people are watching and consuming content on, a living room device, then let's get into, programmatic advertising, and figure out ways where we can, target users locally while they're watching the shows to promote events that are coming up, or, initiatives that are driving them to the game.
Startups should definitely be, paying attention to some of the big trends you just outlined. And I'm wondering if we could spend a minute just talking about some of your tactical advice for startups. Is they're thinking about what might they what are the priorities they need to focus on if they're looking to thrive in today's relatively volatile market?
Yeah, I'd say, from a key strategies that I could think of, that I think are extremely important right now, given just how dynamic this environment is really focusing on niche markets with specific needs, understanding, reaching out to, like you mentioned, like some of these teams, and asking, like, what are some of the challenges? What are you guys seeing from a tech perspective, or, that is needed for, sponsorship? How can we leverage that, as an example? Leveraging data, really getting into the analyzing, data analysis on what customers are doing, just to really inform decision making, and maintaining that flexibility to adapt to these like rapid changes in this environment, based on the consumer preferences. So thinking through the consumer first, what are they adapting to? What do these companies need to do? And that open mind they have to remain flexible, leveraging the data that they have to continue to grow and scale. So building that strong brand identity and customer loyalty from the outset is vital.
It's great. And specifically with your new consulting firm with Tech Pitch Strategies. So how do you work with startups in helping them kind of assess go to market and how to scale?
Yeah. So from that, the goal on that is to help aid or consult with startups, just really by providing them with the insights into the market trends, consumer behavior, you know, evaluating and hearing firsthand, like, what are some of those challenges they're currently seeing or having, helping them tailor their products effectively, leveraging the tech that we mentioned, and, the tools that are out there at, our disposal, can assist in identifying potential partnerships, investment opportunities, navigating, the regulatory landscapes, and really developing those scalable business models to anticipate the future growth challenges that they may have.
That's great. It's interesting. We've got like a number of companies that are in the sports tech space here, as you would imagine, given that we're a headquarters destination for some of the larger athletic and outdoor companies. And then also sports is just such a big part of the local culture between the Blazers and the Timbers and Thorns. And it's been interesting because a lot of the companies that we're seeing in the sports tech startup space right now are really focused on ways to further enhance the fans experience while at a live sporting event, and then building community that extends from that live event to someone's time at home, at work, essentially in between live events, right? So how do you kind of focus on building that set of touch points, if you will, that's more consistent, and you take something that's seen as transactional and you make it more a relationship over time? Is this something that you're seeing as kind of a larger trend, like nationally and globally, or is there something unique about the fact we've got probably half a dozen startups here all focused on solving that pain point?
I would say, the, from my standpoint, from at least what I've seen, the enhanced personalization. I mean, that goes even back to like with the AI and machine learning capabilities of being able to get this information right at the outset. A lot from what we're seeing and how that's developing, but the enhanced personalization really kind of diving deeply into that. I think delivering personalized content, offers or experiences that resonate not from like a fan or group level, but just as a targeted like individual level. That to me, it makes everyone or fans in general feel uniquely valued rather than just part of a mass audience. Being able to speak directly to someone is so much more powerful than it is just from an overall audience standpoint. The community building component is allowing, like, for me, it's incorporating these features into like the platforms that allow fans to interact with each other. So creating the content, social experiences. I think that is extremely valuable. Gamification, loyalty programs are, important elements, making fans, providing rewards to them, which, in turn will help with the engagement, the loyalty, and just growing the fan base. I think from my time, even, through ESPN days to, working in sports with Amazon and Roku, like the exclusive access and experiences are something that are extremely important, not just even for the specific teams, but even the companies you just mentioned. I mean, Nike's a major brand that everyone knows, like Adidas, On Cloud. I think these other major companies, there are people that would love to know or, have the opportunity to actually visit some of these campuses and see the behind the scenes stuff that, the tours that you could tell, like, these are folks that don't have this in their everyday lives and they get that experience, which is, I think, really, it's huge and it's impactful. And then just in figuring out a way, I think consistent, like meaningful communication is important. So, not doing it in a way where you're feeling like, customers are feeling like they're getting spammed all the time, but just finding a way to maintain regular, meaningful communication with fans that are targeted, but being able to do it through newsletters or updates or just even direct interactions through social media. Feeling that two-way interaction for people, I think, is extremely important. And again, that helps build that trust and grow your consumer base.
Shifting gears for a sec to a topic that you were touching upon a little bit earlier in our conversation, which was essentially the impact that effective leadership can have. And you cited Bob Iger in particular during your time at Disney as someone who was both an inspiring and also effective leader, who kind of set direction for the rest of the company and multiple teams kind of cascading down. One thing that's come up a lot with all the volatility in the tech sector right now for folks who are still employed right now at companies is this feeling of a lack of kind of agency to kind of control or navigate some of the volatility. And I'm wondering, like, what are some examples of things you've seen during your time at larger organizations when it comes to effective team building? So how can, not necessarily the CEO, but individual contributors and also members of teams, foster a culture of innovation and collaboration?
Um, it's a great question. I from my, I guess from my own personal experience of managing and leading teams, I think from the start, with managing a team, I've learned that when we just became managers, I had a mentor of mine that said, there's no book or leadership course that you could take on that's going to help you feel comfortable with managing a team. Like, it's not going to give you the book to do it. You have to go out there and you have to feel it. You have to feel that saying something wrong, and then realizing that you made a mistake and owning up to it, but then learning from that. And you grow as a leader from that. Like, just, kind of giving that empowerment with your team, and that will build that trust in general. I think the openness, the encouraging members to, voice new ideas, whether they're, positive, or they're opportunities of like, hey, look, there's a challenge here. There's a lot of times I think, leaders, they want to stay, at the 50,000-foot view level for good reason, but it's also important too, to really talk to the folks and understand concerns, with the folks that are, I guess they have the boots on the ground. And so making sure that, their people are open to voice new ideas and kind of experiment with them, ensuring there's, a robust framework to test these ideas safely. I think that recognizing and rewarding creative efforts also crucial for sustaining the culture that, we want in a positive way. For me, like, I think, everyone is different, right? So there's not one way to manage a team. I've learned that from both professional wise and also even with my 3 kids. I can't parent each kid the exact same way. Everyone is parented differently. So everyone is motivated differently as well. Some people may be motivated purely by, a monetary incentive, but then there's others that you find could be motivated by sending like an email, CCing, the head of the department, to someone on your team saying like, hey, great work on this, or, hey, this is, I appreciate your time here, or, something to that effect could be even more, more monumental than just even a money component that's going to continue to keep people motivated and focused on their overall objectives. And so to me, like, I think by starting with that and keeping that, that type of environment where, there's an open door policy and people can share their ideas, thoughts, opinions, et cetera. But, in a way where they also are providing, hey, this is what the problem is, and here's what I think the solution could be, or here's what could solve this, then, you got to be open to it.
I love those observations. There was uh, a boss that I worked for, a little while ago, actually. I'm now realizing I'm older than I'd like to think. But what was interesting about that particular boss was she was the first person in my professional career who actually asked me, not just do I know what my KPIs are and sort of what my goals are for that particular organization, but she was like, each time we had kind of a 360 review or whatever, it was, what are your personal goals for this next year, and then what are the things you'd like to achieve professionally as you look to whatever's next after this. And I found that level of transparency and openness on the part of someone who I was reporting to was interesting. It helped me trust them more to say, hey, this person's got my long-term interests in mind. And I think that's exactly what you highlighted with the importance of some of the individual customized approaches that you saw work so effectively as part of teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, getting that established right away with your own, your manager can control your own destiny, essentially. Like, you may be passionate about the company, but your manager is important to make sure that you guys are aligned. That's something that I've learned even from the beginning days of my career through mentors, where it's, if you're walking into a review, there should be no surprises. You should be on the same page of understanding, or at least having an idea of what your strengths and opportunities for growth are right when you walk in there, and then using that time to really understand, like, how do you continue to grow in those areas with your manager, and having a manager that, is open to the fact that, like, hey, no one's perfect. I got to a point where I wanted to be in negotiations at ESPN so bad and work on the corporate team, because prior to that, my job was to go out, and it was almost like a lobbyist type position where I was promoting our brands and services. And I realized, like, man, this is great, but I really want to be on the negotiation team. So I worked my way through that, was able to get on the team. But then at that point, all of a sudden I realized, man, I'm about to go into a boardroom and I'm nervous. I don't know what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say. There's everything you said. There was, making sure there was a lawyer there. And so you're terrified of that. And I had a boss who said to me, look, I'm going to be there with you. I would rather you say something and screw up and learn from that, as opposed to just remaining quiet, not saying a word, and not learning that from a growth standpoint. You won't grow. And so by doing that and feeling that trust of knowing like, okay, I'm going to go out there and give it my best. And if I say something wrong or, do something wrong, it's not going to be held against me. It's going to be something where we're going to look at as a learning experience that I'll grow from. And that was huge for my career, because it just really gave me that trust and mindset of like, all right, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do my best. And I know I'm going to be backed up and supported along the way.
That's fantastic. You mentioned you got 3 kids, your family, you're here in the Portland area. I'm wondering, as we kind of wrap up, what are some of your observations of things you're optimistic about for this region? Like why choose to grow a startup and a family here?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm originally from Florida. I've kind of bounced around throughout my life. My wife, who I met, you know, 8 years ago or so now, we dated long distance. I came up here to visit her, and it was a blind date setup, visiting a buddy of mine, and she's born and raised here, and family's here, and all of a sudden, we started doing hikes, and we started going out to, the coast, and then we were over in Bend, and I was like, man, it's beautiful here. I absolutely love the environment of Oregon. I'd say the challenge that I've had, which now this is what's helped me kind of understand more about the tech and sports industry here, is I realized, I only knew the environment component of it. Our kids are now in school where I'm volunteering with my son's school at West TV. I've got coaching youth sports. I've gotten heavily involved with the community, because I then realized, man, I only know, I have my network and my industry I've worked in. And for me has always been in, either California or the East Coast. I really want to dig roots here. Like, we're not going anywhere. We're settled. We love this area. My mom moved here from Florida. And there's a lot of opportunity here. And I remember the days, like, I was excited when my wife and I were dating, to come here, visit her in Portland when I was in LA, and go to the downtown area and visit the cool restaurants and unique like bars and speakeasies to check out. I thought that was amazing. And so while I know there's been a lot of downward change over the years, to me, what I've seen is a lot of upside and opportunity, where, meeting folks like you, Skip, and others, and kind of educating myself of understanding the landscape is promising. I mean, I also see like my kids growing up in this, and to me, it's like, hey, I want to make a change here too. I want to be not only, out there from a professional standpoint, but from the community side, which from what my learnings are, is extremely important with Oregon. People are very loyal here, and relationship driven. But by getting involved with the community, you're not only helping that and growing that, and fixing some of these challenges that we've had, but also, you're building the roots here and setting up that foundation. And I just think there's a lot of like tremendous upside with this area that, our people are really starting to now slowly discover and understand.
John, thanks for taking some time to share some of your wisdom and experience with us today. We really appreciate you and you're taking the time to share all of this with our listenership. So it was a pleasure speaking with you, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Skip. Really appreciate the time and for having me on the show.